This is take 2 of introducing Sybil's petticoat project, as I think I have rambled a little too much in the first one. It's Alirien, and today we are starting on Sybil's skirts, and her skirt is comprised of 3 pieces: an underskirt, or what we would call a petticoat, a forepart, which is a detachable piece just visible through the opening of the 3rd piece, which is the overskirt or outer skirt. And today in this video we are focusing on the underskirt. The underskirt or petticoat could be worn in one of 2 ways. It could be over the farthingale, which we're gonna do, so that it helps to smooth out and hide the rigging lines of all of these, bits of reed or wire or whatever you used. Or it could be worn underneath the farthingale to give that a bit more body and a bit more shape and be a true petticoat where it's entirely underneath. We are once again using a Margot Anderson pattern. It is not the underpinnings pattern, however. We will be revisiting the underpinnings pattern when we get around to the partlet. This is the 16th century ladies' skirts, which does include instructions for all 3 pieces. This was entirely a PDF pattern. You would have seen with the underpinnings that all of the pattern pieces are an actual traditional, physical tissue paper pattern. This was a PDF pattern. I downloaded the whole thing onto my computer and got to print out the entire thing. You can see how thick the stack of paper is, and I both appreciate this because it's convenience. I didn't have to wait for it to be mailed to me, but I hate it as well because you can only print one-sided with a PDF pattern, so it's a lot more paper than I would have liked to use. It's also a lot of tedium because instead of unfolding a single sheet of tissue paper to find the pieces I need, which has its own hassles, don't get me wrong, I now get to spread out somewhere that has enough space with way too much Scotch tape and tape all of these pieces together, not quite edge to edge, in order to make all the usable pattern pieces to then cut out. So that is the first step. That is the probably most tedious step of this. Once we're over that hump, this should be pretty simple because it is just a big skirt that's gathered down at the waist. Looking through the pattern, it is effectively 3 pieces: the center front triangle and 2 very large rectangular side pieces that wrap around to the back and form the center seam. If the fabric we work with is 44 inches wide or less, there is an extra panel that we will be cutting out to help extend it to fit that width that is intended for the ungathered skirt. But we will worry about that once we figure out what fabric we're using. I really want to go with a cotton for this, a good sturdy cotton. I'm gonna get one as close in color as possible to my satin lining that I already have on hand. I will take a swatch of this with me to Joann. It's the most convenient fabric store to find a cotton that is as close in color to this as possible. And potentially I will be getting some black cotton to go in the center underneath where the forepart will be attaching. I'm pointing to something off screen as though you can see what I'm looking at. Looking through the sizing and having taken Sybil's measurements earlier with all of her undergarments on, the waistline we are working with is a 32 inch. So we will be using the size 16. We may actually technically need the 14 on this. I think actually I did the 14 for the farthingale, and it is still a little bit too big. I might cut out the 14 instead. The bigger issue, however, is that we're gonna need a very long skirt here. Waist to floor over the bum roll at her side was 44 inches. At the back, it's 47. We're not going to be hemming this very high at all if it's not already dragging the floor. But again, things to figure out. That's part of why we're doing a mock-up, is to make sure that we get the waist measurement correct and to also make sure that the length is going to be sufficient. As I said, it's only 3 pieces. I'll worry about the notions when we do the final version, but essentially all you do is decide if you're having the forepart completely attached or detachable, and if it's detachable, whether you're going to tie it on or if you're going to snap it into place. I'm not sure if I want to do the snaps or the ties. The snaps will be slightly less work, but the loops will probably be more correct for the period. So I might go with the ties, even though it's gonna be a bit more work. You make all of your ribbon loops and attach those, and then you sew your 3, potentially 4 sections together, and then you gather it down to the waistline, you put on a waistband, and you put a hook in the back, and you hem the skirt. Generally, very simple. The only issue is that not all of the technique instructions are in here, because apparently, I'm gonna read this for you. After creating 7 patterns with book-length instruction manuals, it became obvious that we were repeating ourselves, and the logical solution was to gather some of the material into a separate book. The techniques manual is available as a free PDF download on our website. So I'm gonna have to go find that PDF book to double check what she means with some of the terms as to how to finish the seams, and to double check that the seam allowance is supposed to be 5/8. It has been for everything else, so I presume it is, but just to be safe, It is movie night, and I don't want to work on anything while we're watching the movie, because the whole point of having movie night is to sit and be together and enjoy something together. So when we're done with the movie, depending what time it is, I will start taping these pieces together. Probably the bulk of piecing the pattern together will be tomorrow, and we'll get as far through the mock-up phase as we can, and hopefully have a petticoat done and a video edited before next Thursday. If we can't knock it out within the week, I will just have another gaming VOD for you guys. Actually, I will probably have an event vlog, an event/personal vlog, and then this video. You will already know what order things have come out, but I'm trying to piece it in my head. But yeah, so we're gonna put the pattern pieces together into a usable shape, and then we'll go from there with deciding the size we're gonna mock up and tracing it off and so on. Has been taped together and subsequently cut apart, and in taping it together and double checking the pattern instructions, there's only one actual printed pattern piece for the underskirt, and there are 3 for the overskirt. The thing they've decided to do is print the nicely shaped ones, the particularly shaped ones. The rest of this is 2 giant rectangles, and so what they've done is give you instructions for how long those rectangles need to be, and you simply cut them on the fold at the same width that you cut this piece from. I'm gonna go with the recommended length for the 2 underskirt pieces for the size, and I think I am gonna go ahead and test the size 14, because for whatever reason, I don't know, I feel like that's gonna be closer. I would rather have it gathered down and be too tight and let the gathers out a little bit than gather it down as tight as it can be and have it still be too loose and have to take it further in. We're gonna test the size 14 for the mock-up. I need to cut this on the fold for 1 layer, and then cut 2 big rectangles on the fold that are 46 7/8 inches long. I might just go ahead with 47 inches just to not worry about that 1/8. I'm gonna take a break because my back is very upset at being not quite hunched, but standing at this desk taping everything and subsequently cutting out. So I'm gonna go take a break and probably go munch something, and then we will get out the muslin and cut out our 3 underskirt mock-up pieces. I got all 3 pieces cut, and I draped them temporarily on my form to see, here's my face, what it would look like, get sort of a semblance of what it would look like, and already I'm pretty pleased with it. I may cut the side pieces a little bit longer. We will see what happens when I make the final garment and we do a test fit on Sybil in the actual undergarments. But so far I'm pretty happy with the fit, but that was just draping. I am gonna stitch it together and see how it falls. I'm also gonna go ahead and put the gather stitches in the waistline, probably spend the last few minutes of work pulling the gathers in tonight, and then tomorrow I'll finish it off enough that we can do a test fit and we will go from there. But I might not need to do too terribly much to this between mock-up size and final version. I'm guessing that Thursday I'll be able to go get the material and sew up the actual final version of this. Thursday, Friday will probably be for the final one, So I think I will actually have this video up in time for my original deadline. Whoa. We'll see what happens though. Let me get these vertical seams stitched up for you guys. I've got it stitched up and gathered down. Here it is on the form, but I do think the size 14 will do quite nicely. And of course, if we need to, we can take the gathers in or take in the seams at the waist if it needs to be a little snugger. The hem we will worry about with the final version. But yeah, so we will go get fabric and notions tomorrow and get the final version stitched up as soon as possible. And you should have a video by its deadline. Let me turn this around so you guys can see the front. There she is from the front. This will turn out well, I think. Mom and I ran some errands yesterday and did get the fabric. Just for reference in this light so you can really see what's going on. This is a solid white sheet of paper. This is the silver satin lining that I will be using in several places on the final ensemble. This is the cotton I have gotten good lord, that I have gotten to use for the petticoat. It's not exact, because I forgot to bring a swatch of this yesterday, but it's pretty damn close, and I don't think most people will really notice the difference right away. This is from Joanne. It is the So Classic Cotton Solid in Pearl Blue. So it is technically blue, but it's such a pale, pale blue that it really just comes off as a cool tone. Very pale gray. It's pretty close to a silver. I thought this was a lighter silver in my head, but you know what? It's fine. As long as it's all within the same color families of blue and black and silver, we're good. And then these are the ribbons that I have gotten. I may use the narrower one for the actual loops for tying the 4-part on, but I wanted to go ahead and get some of this like wide, darker gray one. It's generally 7/8 of an inch wide. They had no 1-inch grosgrain ribbon in gray in stock yesterday, and I really like the chevron one. I may find use for it somewhere. Now I need to take this lovely stretch of about 6 1/8 yards of cotton, and I need to pre-wash it and pre-stretch it. So this is gonna get thrown in the wash and then through the dryer, just to get rid of any finishing stuff, leftover chemicals from finishing, any leftover dye, and also to help loosen up the fiber. So if it's going to have any issues in the wash, it happens before it gets sewn, so we don't have any issues with the final garment, because the petticoat is one of those things that is definitely going to get washed. I can't really do anything else until it's washed, so I'm going to get some other work done, not directly pertaining to this petticoat, while it is going through the laundry. So next you see me, this will be washed and dried, and we will be cutting it out. The cotton for the petticoat is washed, dried, and has been pressed, and I've already got it laid out with the first pattern piece, the only actual pattern piece, pinned and ready to cut. I figured I would show you. There that is. This is cut on the fold, so it is pinned along the fold, and I've left it folded up at the hem, again, just so I don't need to reprint this pattern piece, because I don't want to have to go through the effort of retaping it either. And I did trim this edge after pressing to be flush and straight with one of the lines on the cutting grid. Now we're just going to cut this out and cut out my 4 other panels, because again, the instructions do mention that if you're using 44-inch or narrower fabric, you will need 2 additional panels that are 1/4 of the width to give the petticoat enough fullness to actually get around the farthingale. I will be cutting out this front piece first because it is at an angle that will determine how much material I actually have to work with. And then I will do the 2 big rectangles, which will be 47 inches in length, and then I will do the 2 smaller panels, which will also be 47 inches in length, but they will be 11 inches wide. So what I will probably end up doing is just cutting one rectangle that is 22 by 47 and then cutting that in half. Yeah. So yeah, let's get this cut out and then we will start doing the vertical seams. Ms. Anderson, I have another problem with your pattern. Can someone explain to me why here on the Yardage and Notions page, underskirt, 1-inch grosgrain ribbon, 2 1/8 yards. But if I go to the first page of constructing the underskirt, 4-inch lengths of 1/4-inch grosgrain ribbon, twill taper fabric tube. Why are you giving me 2 different ribbon widths? So now all 3 of my options are too big, including this one, which is 5/8. So now I'm gonna go through my ribbon and see if I have narrower that is grosgrain, and I'm just gonna use that. And if it's the wrong color, oh well. Or the other option, because it is 4/15, I may run to Joann and go find 1/4-inch wide grosgrain in either silvery gray, blue, or black. It says 4-inch lengths times 10, so I need 40 inches, which is, what's 40 divided by 12? That is 3 feet, that's a yard. So 1 spool should be enough for the loops. How much ribbon do I need for the 4-part? 10 lengths of ribbon, 20 inches long, so that's 200 inches, which is 16 feet, between 16 and 17 feet, which is 20 feet total, which is about how much is on a single spool of one of these. I guess I'm just running to Joann, because I don't know that I've got the correct kind of ribbon. Give me 1 sec. Nope. Those are all satin. Yeah, all my narrow stuff is satin finish, not grosgrain. So I get to run back to Joann to get more ribbon. So I guess I'm doing that before I go pick up my boyfriend. This is becoming a comedy of errors of sorts. The pattern doesn't even have the markings on it for where I'm supposed to position these stupid ribbon loops for attaching this fucking 4-part. It says form strips into loops, pin to front at markings, stitch across loops along seam. What markings? What markings? There are no markings along the edge where these loops are supposed to go. I'm getting real fucking sick of this. I have the ribbon loops pinned on the front panel. To make this as simple as possible, I'm just gonna catch them in the normal seam. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with attaching things with the vertical seams. And I'm starting with these extra panels that are only 11 inches wide. I'm attaching them to the big side panel rectangles. And then I will attach the front panel to each of these big ones. So basically these smaller strips are going to end up being the backmost section. That way the piecing seams will be all the way in the back underneath the overskirt, so it will not be visible at all to anybody, at least it shouldn't be. So I'm gonna go ahead and attach these narrower strips, and then I'll check in when I'm about to attach the front triangle to the large rectangles. I got one of the side pieces pinned onto the front, and so now we're going to run the seam from the top to the bottom and catch the ribbon loops as part of the stitching. Moment of truth. I'm going to open up the seam, and there are ribbon loops securely in there. Sorry, I had Lex's music still going in the background, but I did backstitch. I passed over each ribbon spot once, backstitched it once, and then kept going forward again, just so it would hold a little bit better. I'm gonna do this with the other side and press these seams open. Now the last vertical seam is next, where I have measured and marked with a perpendicular pin 8 inches down from the waistline and pinned the rest of the way down. So now we're gonna do the center back seam and press it open just like we have with all the other seams. I just rechecked the measurement for Sybil laced down in the pair of bodies, and I was 2 inches off, which is why the farthingale's a little too big. When I have a chance between finishing this and getting the rest of the skirt pieces, the 4-part and the overskirt done, I will be opening the farthingale waistband up and gathering that down to the proper measurement of 30 inches, not 32. And so for the underskirt for now, I'm gonna do 30 and a half, just to account for the thickness of the farthingale waistband. And I'm gonna run the gather stitches a little bit differently than I did on the mock-up. I'm going to do one gather stitch in each of the panels, and I'm gonna hold off on the frontmost panel unless it becomes apparent that I need to gather that down. So I will be running 4 gather stitches, one in each narrow backmost section and one in each of the very large rectangle sections. I'll technically be running 2 gather stitches in each section, so 8 runs of stitching in total. Yeah, I'm gonna do that part, skipping the seam allowance section for the back closure area. And then we will gather it down to right about between 30 and 30 and a half inches. And I will tie those off. Depending what time it is when I'm done with that, that may be the stopping point tonight, is getting it gathered and hanging it up overnight so that the vertical stretch, any vertical stretch that needs to happen can happen. And then we will finish off the waistband, the closure, and the hem in the morning. The waistline gathered down as tightly as it would go, because that was about to the right measurement. So this is now clipped on those hangers to hang here on the door overnight, just to make sure that, as I mentioned before, any vertical stretching that's going to happen happens now instead of while it's being worn, so that way the hemline will be more accurate. So tomorrow we will whip up a waistband to go over that. We will add the hook up there, and I will stitch down the seam allowance up here so that it's secured and flush, and then we will trim and fold up the hem. That'll be one more layer done. Alright, good morning. I have been a little bit delayed getting started because this one back here likes to be a nincompoop quite often. He was being very restless this morning, so I tried to be as relaxed through the house today to keep him calm, but every time I come into the back of the house to try to get anything done, he starts getting restless again. He demands to be in the study, or if he can't get in the study, he goes in my mom's room and starts disturbing the dogs in there, and just, he can be a problem sometimes. So I've set him up with his bed in the hallway again, and hopefully he will stay relaxed through this. But we're at least gonna get the waistband done. I will probably need a second pair of hands for getting the hem done, because the best way to do the hem is to actually have Sybil wear everything, including the petticoat, all together, and then get down at floor level, or have her step up on something. The back section will probably be where we actually mark the hemline, because that will be the most affected by the other layers as far as how far down it goes. Thus, it will be the longest, but visually the shortest, and everything else needs to even out to that. So I might get a second pair of hands to make sure I'm actually cutting level with that. For now, we can do the waistband. So I did it off screen, because I just needed to get going here. Let me turn on the overhead here too. Oh dear. We have too much clutter in this room, and it will be tackled after the petticoat is done, possibly after the 4-part is done, we will see. I measured out 32 inches by 2 inches for this waistband. I was very careful in my head with my measurements. And of course the camera's dying, but I've cut out a length of the cotton and a length of fusible interfacing. I'm going to fuse the interfacing to it, and then we will start stitching this on. I will put y'all to recharge while I press this, and hopefully you have enough battery by then to stitch this on. Crisp waistband. I think I finally cracked the code in my own brain to make sure I have waistbands the right size. The length I got was just right, where I had enough of an overlap on each end that I could nicely, cleanly fold it over and stitch it down on the other side. And I did press it before stitching. I stitched in the ditch all the way along. I think I had one spot, where I went up onto the waistband, but I took my time and stayed in that groove for 90 to 95% of it. I did also go ahead and stitch down. Let's see if I can get it to lay the way I need for you to see what I'm talking about. There we go. I stitched down the folded over seam allowance in this upper part, and I backstitched over this section multiple times so it's reinforced under where it splits. Now I need to hem it, so we're gonna get Sybil laced up and into everything, including the petticoat, and this will be pinned in place. It's the very last thing, since it's a hand sewing, very last thing I'll do is the hook and eye. The only issue I can think of with the waistband is right in this section. I didn't catch very much of the cotton. I really only got interfacing. It should still hold for now, but if I need to, I will go back with a needle and thread and do a quick and dirty little blanket stitch to really make sure that edge is held. But everywhere else, it caught as much as it needed to. So yeah, I'm happy with the waistband. We've got a nice, clean skirt opening in the back. We just need the closure and the hem, and she's done. This is definitely gonna be the last day of construction for this. We have gotten the hem folded and trimmed, so it is an inch that's folded over twice, so it's gonna be a 1/2 inch wide hem, but it is an inch worth. We started at the center back, at the shorter of the two panels, folded that up so it was a certain distance longer than the hoop skirt, and then tried to fold it up all the way around. I said we. Sybil was wearing it and standing on something high enough that my mom and I together could work on pinning the hem up so it didn't take quite as long. I went through and trimmed it as evenly as I could and folded it all in and have it pinned, so now I'm going to stitch it. I'm stitching from the outside because my bobbin thread is the wrong color right now, but I'm trying to use up the bobbins I already have wound as much as possible before I wind any new ones, because the bobbin winder on this machine is still broken. I'm waiting as long as possible before I pull out the other machine to wind any bobbins. We're gonna do the hem stitch, and then I'm gonna grab a hook and eye, a large skirt hook, needle and thread and thimble, and go sit and sew that on at the back of the waistband, and she'll be done. Let's get a hem stitched up, yeah? Bear with us as we attempted to wait out the rain the last couple of days, hence this video arriving late to thee. But unfortunately, it seems that Alirien's lovely home of Louisiana has decided that it should feel like dear old England for a couple of days. Hence, indoors, not quite the best light, and a tighter space that is much less appropriate to show off my garb, as I am completely out of place here. But we do here have the completed underskirt, the petticoat, draped over the bum roll, the farthingale, and all the other pieces, and you can really see where the silhouette will land, at least for the skirt, now that the petticoat is done. There are, of course, 2 more pieces left to construct for the skirt, and then we move on to bodice and sleeves, which makes 6 more pieces to the main garb and several accessories thereafter. As I have been with every piece, I am quite elated. I am ecstatic, one may even say, with the results. I do very much like this grey that is sort of teetering into the blue category, and I think it will go quite wonderfully with the rest of the material as more pieces are made. And now that I am indoors, I actually can have my good friend peek in for a moment, sit here at my hip for a bit as we continue to talk. You will learn more about dear Sebastian very soon. Alirien has been kind enough to agree, on top of helping with my clothing, to help me dress up his mobile habitat for all of thee to see, so that when I visit some festivals on her behalf, I can carry him about safely. But I am very happy with this. It helps to smooth out the lines and hide that there was ever an ostensibly bright and vibrant green with kitty cats roaming about it to my farthingale. It helps really bring the period look to where it should be for the time in which I live, and every piece makes me more and more excited for the next piece to come and for the final result. And I do hope with the deepest of my heart that all of thee will be ever as impressed with the final result as I am as we march our way along toward it. As ever, we thank thee very much for sparing your time and attention toward another entry in this series. We do hope thou hast enjoyed, and if thou hast, thou shouldst find the buttons and links to show thy love scattered about the page around the video. If thou wouldst see more of Alirien's sewing-related adventures, you can find a collection of costuming in the cards and in the description, where one might also find a Linktree portal if thou wouldst follow Alirien's adventures in other planes. If nigh else, we do hope thou wouldst subscribe here on the tube of you, so that one may never miss another entry in the ongoing saga of Alirien's adventures. We also ever thank once again Alirien's coven of patrons for continuing to be her biggest supporters, and if thou, dearest viewer, wouldst join their ranks, again check the description for that Linktree portal, within which thou shouldst find her Patreon, which begins at $1 a month to pledge. Gramercy once again, our couriers should be along shortly as ever, with more for thee to see, and shall see thee all again very soon. Anon, friends, and keep aiming, my loves. Sebastian, my feathers are ever so ruffled. I need to find a good way for you to be able to perch on my shoulder. I'm not having to hold you and baby you so